What's up YouTube? My name is Marvin Aziz. I'm a freelance developer and today I want to show you how I built a vertical scroll hero using Webflow and Swiper JS. So today's episode is going to require a little bit of custom code, but don't worry, I've got you covered. You can use my code and implement it into your own sandbox. So yeah, a lot to learn today. I'm very excited about this one. I hope you enjoy it, so let's jump right into it. So this is the finished hero section, and as you can tell, as soon as I start to click this little navigation finger down here, it transitions into the next slide really smoothly, right? So you can also use your mouse and just drag the slide into the next one. It will transition just as nice, and yeah, you see a little background video animation going on. Nothing fancy, but yeah, let's have a look on how I actually built this. So I am right here in the Webflow Designer, and well, in order to understand how to use Swiper JS, you need to understand how to set up the right structure, right? So let's have a look on Swiper. If you go to swiperjs.com, you will find the API, and here you can see how to set up the right structure for Swiper JS. So we've got a main container called Swiper, and in there we've got another wrapper called Swiper wrapper, and in there we've got the slides, right? The rest is not required, but we're going to make use of the Swiper Next button. And if you want, you can add a scroll bar or a pagination as well. But we're going to use these and the next button and close it all together, right? So that's how I set it up in Webflow as well, right? You can see that I've got the Swiper container. Then I've got the Swiper wrapper, and in there I've got two Swiper slides, right? Also above the Swiper wrapper, I've got the Swiper navigation, which is in that case the little finger you can click to navigate to the next slide, right? Let's find out how to actually load Swiper into your Webflow project. Let's click on Get Started here at Swiper JS, and if you scroll down, you can see that they are trying to explain how to install Swiper JS in your project. We're not going to use npm, but we're going to load it from the CDN. So use Swiper from CDN. You can simply copy that code and paste it into your page settings, right? So let's open it up. I've got it already implemented. You can tell right here. So the first one is Swiper, the CSS style sheet, and the second one is the minified version of the Swiper JS files. Let's find out how to set up the structure for Swiper within Webflow. So as you can tell, I've got a container in here. It's just a simple div. I gave it the class of Swiper. So this is referring to this div block right here. And if you open it up, you can see the Swiper navigation and the Swiper wrapper. So I've got the Swiper wrapper here, and the Swiper navigation is another wrapper I added to wrap this button, right? So if we open the Swiper navigation, I've got the Swiper button next down here, which is this one, right? So also, as you can tell, I've added a little background video, and the background video is just a simple video I downloaded from Pexels. It's a license-free video. You can go ahead and check Pexels out if you want. I put it to loop, so it's a never-ending video. And also I wanted to autoplay the video, right? I don't need the play and pause button because I just want to have it playing in the background. I set it to height of 100 VH and the position is fixed, so it doesn't change the location while I slide or do anything on the page, right, to make it easy for us. Okay, so the Swiper wrapper needs to wrap the slides, right? I only added 2 slides, so it's just a simple another div block called with the class of Swiper slide, and I've set it to a width and height of 100 viewport width and viewport height. So it just takes up the full screen on each display size. This is basically the setup you need, and within the slides you can basically do whatever you want to, right? So what I've done is added another container with a text wrapper and another text wrapper. So the first text wrapper, you can actually tell that you can't see anything in there. That's because I've added a heading and changed the opacity to 0. So in the end, we will have a smooth, nice transition from a 0 to 100, and we will change the opacity using GSAP, right? Also, as you can tell, the text comes out of nowhere, right? So we need the wrapper to not show the overflow. So I've added the attribute overflow hidden up here, so you won't see the text if it goes below the wrapper, right? That's the effect we're seeing here. Okay. The other text wrapper is well, it's not actually really necessary, but I've added it anyway, so you can actually animate this one as well if you wish. But it just has the H2 in there, and yeah, nothing fancy about it. So that's basically the structure you need. If you okay, let's talk real quickly through the Swiper navigation. So this class is not necessary, but this one is, right? So Swiper button next is down here. Make sure to add it if you want to use it. And I've added a little background image. It's the finger down here. I've added a little hover animation, so as soon as you hover over it, it just moves, right? Yeah, that's pretty much it. And for the slides, I've also added a little background color. So the first one is red with around 30% opacity, and the second one is blue with also 30% opacity, so that we can actually see the slide transition more clearly, right? Yep, that's pretty much it. So let's go ahead and actually start implementing the code. So in order to bring this setup into life, we need to implement a little bit of code. And what I actually like to do is to use a Codesandbox in combination with Webflow, so that it is easier for me to change the code without having to republish the site, right? So normally what you would do is you would go to your page settings down here, click on settings, and you could add all the code right in here. But then as soon as you want to change it, you would need to save this and publish it, and then recheck if it's actually working, which is a little bit annoying, to be honest. What I am doing is I am basically loading the Codesandbox, right? Custom Codesandbox down here, which is this one. And as soon as I change the code to anything down here, it will change after I reload the page. Yeah, that's why I am using the Codesandbox, so it is way faster for me to adjust the code as needed. And I would recommend to you to use it as well, because it's so easy to set up. So basically what you do is you just load the index.js file from the Codesandbox and you link the style sheet from the Codesandbox into your system, right? And that's exactly how you do it. You will be able to go ahead and copy the code in the description, but you need to make sure that you actually add your own link to this code, and also make sure that the naming is correct of the index.js and the style.css, because you will find the URL right here. So this is the Codesandbox. You can simply go ahead and just create a new file. You can set up a free account here, and I have just created this one for this tutorial. So create a new sandbox. You can go ahead and create a vanilla Codesandbox and just delete everything that is in here, in the index.js and the styles.css, and you're good to go. So you can go ahead and copy this link down here and just add it to these tags, right? So this is the link I've added, and then I've added the file name as well, which is index.js. You can find right here, and that's pretty much it. So this way it's way easier for me to just change the code from here, reload the page, and it will show up immediately without needing to republish it through Webflow. Although Webflow became really quick at publishing, it's still more convenient to use the Codesandbox, and I highly recommend it. All right, I hope you learned something right there. Let's continue to actually look at the code and start creating these little animations. As mentioned before, we are going to use two libraries, which are Swiper.js and GSAP. So in order to use these, we first need to load them, right? So I've already done this down here, but you can simply go ahead and check out the Swiper.js website, and you will find the installation documentation down here. And you can simply use the section use Swiper from CDN and copy this section down here into your body tag, just before the body tag, right? For GSAP, you can do the same. You can go ahead and go to greensock.com, and it's a crazy fast and lightweight library for animations. And you can go ahead and click here on more, and you will find you can either download GSAP and upload it into Webflow, for example, or another hosting facility and load it from there. But you can also use a CDN. If you scroll down here, there's the GSAP 3 install helper, which is really useful. You can basically just choose whatever you want to load. For example, if you want to have the flip and the scroll trigger and maybe a motion path or the text animations, you can go ahead and click on all of those, but we're going to limit it to GSAP core for now. That's all we need. And just copy the code down here. You're good to go. Add it to your, just before the body tag, to your page settings. And that's all I have done for up here. Right? Then make sure to save and publish. and we are ready to start writing the code. So let's have a look on what I have done in the code. So if you're new to coding, this might go a little bit beyond your experiences, but stay with me, it's actually not that difficult, and if you understand this right, you will be able to create really amazing transitions, animations, and just be a better developer altogether. Because I mean, Webflow is capable of doing a lot of great things, but if you are able to combine Webflow with a little bit of code, you are able to go above and beyond, right? So let's give it a shot, okay? So what I've done here is basically set up Swiper. So you need to create a new Swiper constant and just create the parameters. So I wanted it to be able to I wanted to use my keyboard to trigger the slides to change. That's why I enabled the keyboard parameter and gave it the value of true. And also I need to set the direction to horizontal, and I wanted to loop, right? So as soon as the last slide is showing, if you click the next button, it just shows the first slide again, right? And then what I've done is I added a navigation, and we are only using a next button, so it's called the next L for next element, and you just assign the class to it you've been using, right? If you have a previous element, for example, so a back button, you can uncomment this section and add a comma to it, and you'll be able to just choose whatever class you assign to it, and yeah, you're good to go. But we're not going to do this. So this is the basic setup for the Swiper, right? So that's the basic configuration. What we need to do now is tell Swiper what actually to do while transitioning, right? So what I've done in order to help me understand what's actually happening, I've added a console log. So the console log just shows me whenever there's a transition, right? Whenever there's a transition, it shows me the transition start and an on change, right? So that's all I've done. Transition start is here, on change is here, right? So in Swiper we have a couple of states, and one of the states is slide change transition start, which is obviously starting as soon as the transition is starting. And I've been using also the slide change transition end, which is showing up as soon as the transition is about to end, right? That's why I have added the console logs to see when these things are happening. So this one starts before this one, right? In order to understand what I've done here, we will need to understand how GSAP is actually working. So let's head over to GreenSock and click on the Getting Started guide. And down here, there's a little video explaining basically all of it, but we can also just scroll a bit further down and look at this example, right? So we can use to, from to, or set, right? So to is the simplest form. It just goes to a specific state, and we can just define the state itself, right? So in this case, it would be 40 pixels on the x-axis and fill the color blue, of the selected class, right? The other one would be from. So we have we start by defining the first state, which would be minus 40 pixels on the x-axis and the fill color blue, just like here. But it's transitioning to the state that is already defined for the element, right? And if we use from to, we can decide how it's supposed to look for both states, right? So the first one would be minus 40 pixels to start here with the color of blue, and then it goes to plus 40 pixels with a fill of green, right? And that's exactly what we are going to use as well. So this is exactly what I've been using here. We are using from to, select the H1 and start with an opacity of 1 and with an opacity of 0 and the duration of 0. This is just to make sure that as soon as we are starting into the next slide, I don't want to see the H1, right? So it's supposed to come out of nowhere. That's why I set the duration to 0. All right? So in the slide change transition end, that's the interesting stuff actually. So again, we're selecting the H1 and we're changing the position on the y-axis by a percentage. So it starts with 200%. So it's underneath the div block, right? With an opacity of 0. And it ends with an opacity of 1 and goes on the y-axis to the position of 0, right? You can add an ease to it. I've chosen the power 4 and the duration 1.4 seconds, right? And if we save that and reload the page, we are going to be able to just see that, right? So it starts below the div with an opacity of 0 and ends with an opacity of 1 right in the middle of that div block. Okay, so just for demonstration, I'm gonna set this opacity to 1 so you can see what I've been actually doing with this. I'm gonna save that, reload the page, and now you should be able to see that from the beginning the text was visible, right? It looks like a little glitch. It's there, then it goes down, and then it comes back up. And I wanted to get rid of that, so I added the opacity of 0 for the start. And that's how I made sure that you won't be able to actually see the text while transitioning to the next one. Right? Easy. Okay, so there's one more thing. Maybe if you worked along with me, you'll notice that your button has a little arrow down here, which is coming from Swiper.js. So by default, you'll have a blue, I can actually show it to you. Save that, reload. So here you go. You have a little blue arrow, which is coming from Swiper.js. You can simply get rid of it by adding a little line of CSS, which is this one. So I've added the class and just gave it an opacity of 0. Save that, made sure to insert it into the project as well, right? So I'm loading the style sheet right here with the link and the file name. And you're good to go. It's gone. Animation is working. We are done. Well done. So I really hope you learned something new today. This was a little bit more into code. Let me know if you actually liked that. And yeah, stay tuned. I've got a couple of really nice ideas coming up. So make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, show me some love, and yeah, see you in the next one.